we have learned that there are a large number of meetings tonight, and people are scattered throughout DuPage at a variety of events. So that's the bad news, but the good news is that we have some excellent presenters, and we are recording this, and we will put it out on Facebook. So we want to make sure that we celebrate the expertise and commitment of the people who have agreed to speak to us tonight. And in Allison's case, I understand you are a candidate for in this election cycle. So we're going to celebrate that too.
Yes, I am candidate. Yeah, candidate and trustee. So
yeah, that's awesome. So and then of course Dan Markwell, hey Dan, is our
hello, good evening,
hi.
everyone.
So we're going to celebrate you, but maybe you don't really care so much at this point about being celebrated, but I can celebrate Dan in a way that no one else here can. So I will.
Now's as good a time as any.
So yeah. So, well, why don't we get started? We are anticipating the arrival of Margaret De La Rosa, who is on the District 87 High School board. She doesn't seem to be here yet, but I expect that she will show up. So, so for those of us who are here, and welcome Martin as well, this is an effort by Indivisible DuPage to, here she comes, to take an opportunity to share with our community information about the fiduciary lives of our boards and the municipal units that they oversee. We have learned in conversations with our fellow voting citizens that people very often do not understand what the issues are as pertains to money and taxes and budgets, and that's really important. And as Alice and I had a conversation earlier today, and as I mentioned to her, when I was a candidate for a COD board, I learned in the course of my campaign that I needed to know much more, or anything for that matter, about the budgeting process, and I had a crash course in it. But now that I am sitting on that board, it's evident to me that I didn't understand how important that feature would be, and what would be expected of me as a board member. So we would hope that people are considering running for office in the future, and we wanted to just kind of, broad strokes about the financial issues and the lives of trustees in fulfilling their responsibilities. So let's get started with Allison Longenbaugh, who is currently a library trustee for Naperville, and is also a candidate, as we mentioned, for Naperville City Council in this current election cycle. And I'll hand it over to Allison. I don't know if you have any slides. If you want to share your screen, I can make you a co-host.
Oh, no, I didn't. I could have, but I was at work today and I didn't have time to make the slides up when I got home, but I do have stuff that would make a great slide, but anyway.
Oh, Okay, well, we can talk about that later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if
Thank
need be, I could put something together and provide it to you that if you needed to share it. So, so anyway, so I am a library board trustee in Naperville, city council candidate as well. And so I'm going to kind of intertwine both the story of library, but because of the way that the library trustee works, it also goes in with city council. So I think I'll be able to hit, because I don't know if Andrew was going to be able to be here from Lombard, so I can kind of explain both and tell that story. So I think that'll be helpful. So, so how do boards carry out their fiduciary responsibility? So the Naperville Library is actually different than other library districts. It's not completely autonomous. It's not a completely autonomous taxing body like other towns who have specific library districts. So for example, Lisle, Plainfield, and Hinsdale all have their own library district. The library trustees are elected. I am not an elected trustee. I am appointed. The mayor appoints the library board in Naperville. So what that means is that we basically work with city staff to do the budget. So we have a liaison from the finance department in the city that is assigned to the library, and they work very closely with the library director in order to do the budget. So that's how it's set up in Naperville. But the library staff is the one who is putting the budget together. So we've got a director, he's, like the CEO of the library, and he's, hired position, and he works with city staff and with his own staff to put the budget together. And then it comes to the board approves, and then it goes to city council and they approve. I'll talk more to that, more detail into the time, the process and the timeline, but that's, how it goes. Director, board, city council. And because it's municipal, the budget should be relatively flat. Like, we're not looking to make a profit. It's government. We're not trying to, make any money on it. Bottom line, we want to be responsible stewards of tax dollars, and we want to make sure that we're spending those dollars wisely. So expenses and revenues are generally flat. So where do we get the money? Where do we get the funding for the library? So the library budget for 2023 is $16,842,293. So
Wow.
yeah, so 16.8 million. Expenditures are 70% are salaries and benefits. So the most of the bulk of it goes towards paying people to work at the library. And then 15% of it is for books and materials, and then 15% of it is other things. 95% of the library funding comes from property taxes. And just comparing that to the city, only 22% of the city's general fund comes from property taxes, but 95% of it for the library is property taxes. Just to talk about property taxes from 2014 to 2022, the tax rate has stayed constant or has actually decreased. This year is the first time in a number of years, in 8 years, where that we had a slight property tax increase, which was 3.12% increase year on year. So it wasn't a very big increase, and that basically was 15.96 million is what the property tax levy was for 2023. The city calls this their special fund. Things like the library and things like neighbor settlement are part of this special fund, part of property taxes. And then the rest of that, but total budget was 16.8. We got 15.9 from property taxes. The rest of it comes from state grants and just other places like library operations and stuff like that. So that like $1 million or whatever is made up from state and other things. What else do we spend it on? So salaries and benefits. We do have some big projects this year. We're going to be putting a new catalog search engine, the one that, when you go into the library and you look for your book online, like that interface is going to actually have an entirely new infrastructure this summer. I guess the one we have right now is like 20 years old. And so we're going to have a new one of those. There's going to be a bunch of renovations to Nichols and library staff areas, because those are like 20 jillion years old as well, super dated. Some improvements to the heating and air conditioning, and then just improvements to, general tech networks and stuff. Just to compare to what the city is. So our budget, 16.8 million. The entire city revenue budget is $588.5 million. So we got 16 million versus 588 million. So library's 16.8 is just 3% of the entire city budget. So that just kind of puts it in perspective, just a tiny little bit. Just staying on the city, that budget of 588 is an increase of 5.5%. The revenues increased 5.5% because post-pandemic recovery, we have a lot more state and local taxes. So we had more revenues. Just talking about where the city gets their revenues. So library was 95% from property taxes, 22% of the cities is from property taxes, 40%. So over $250 million of the city budget is from what's called charges for services. And that's charges like electric and water and wastewater. So that's where the bulk of the city's revenues are coming from, electric and those kinds of things that power our lights and all of that we're paying into. On the expense side, their expenses were budgeted at 603 million, which was an increase of 11%. They've got a lot of capital improvements going in, like there's going to be some stuff going with the water waste treatment plant, and also costs increased. The cost of labor has gone up. The cost of getting any kind of materials has gone up. City staff has been really doing a good job of not just replacing things, like especially like the electrical group, like they are maintaining their transformers and all of the equipment very, very well. And they move stuff around as need be because they can't get parts for things. So they're trying to make sure that they keep inventory for things. We've also seen the same thing for the library with increases in costs as well. So that's how that works. So budget timeline and how that happens. So, well, one, I thought this was interesting. It doesn't really have anything to do with this. I just found it kind of cool. Every year the city budget has a theme. And so the 2023 theme was priorities, performance, and progress. To compare, 2022 was matching the moment, and 2021 was investing in Naperville. So I thought that was kind of interesting, that they always have a theme and then they talk to that theme and they intertwine it through their budget discussions. So the timeline, so it starts pretty early. In July is when the library staff starts talking about their budget. So the staff is getting together, they're talking about all that stuff. I'm sure they've got the finance department who's also involved with that. That's July. August is when the tax levy process discussions start happening at the city council level. Lots of analysis with city staff. I think council is involved a little bit. It says that they have, the council holds a financial overview and tax levy workshop in August, and they use that to direct staff. But I looked at the calendar and I hadn't seen it on the calendar in a few years. So I don't know if they're just doing that offline with just city staff and then they're bringing it to city council, or if it's happening at the workshops, but I didn't see it on the calendar in a while. It could also be happening at the financial advisory board because that's a commission that the city has. It could be happening in there. I'm not really sure. And then in August, that's when the preliminary budget for the library gets presented to us as trustees. So basically all that work that Dave and the directors did that summer, they're like, here we go. This is what we're thinking. What do you think? And at that point, we can push back on things and say, ooh, whoa, we don't like that, or we do like that. Generally, it's like they're very responsible stewards. They're not trying to buy a whole lot of stuff. They're basically trying to keep things flat. And where there is this increase this year is because we have some capital improvement projects that need to happen. So it was warranted. In September, the executive director of the library presents to the board the final budget that he is going to present to city council. It has the budget and the levy request, and then any capital improvement plan stuff, which is kind of kept separate. In October is when city council starts their workshops. They do 3 budget workshops, and each one has a theme. The first one is generally like, here's the revenues, here's the expenses, very high level. This is where it's coming from. It usually has a theme. I think this year's first budget one was about public safety and about, they had a lot of talks with the police and the fire department and all that kind of stuff, also water department and electric. In October, the second one is when the library gets to present. So mid-October, the library director presents the same thing that they presented to us at the board level. He presents it at a city council meeting workshop. NAPER settlement presents at that same workshop. And then there's a final workshop, usually at the beginning of November or whatever, maybe, yeah, I think it's right around Thanksgiving. And then in December, the city council approves the entire budget. After all of these workshops, they approve the final budget. And then in end of December, beginning of January, they actually have to pass resolutions that says, this is a resolution that says what the budget is going to be. And what the capital improvements are going to be as well. So that happens in December, usually early January. Yeah, so that's how it works. I do have more information if anybody's interested about the types of taxes. I don't know if anybody's interested in that. I learned quite a lot today as I was doing my research for this. So I don't know if anybody cares about like all the different kind of taxes that the city has in addition to property taxes. I could talk about that if you want, but if not, that's how the budget process works for the library and the city council.
Wow, you're running for city council and you have this grasp of the budgeting process, which is awesome.
Well, that really helped. It helped
Yeah,
to
sure.
do this exercise because I go to every single city council meeting, even the budget workshops. And I go to them all and I listen, but until you actually like have to make a slide for it, like it doesn't necessarily like figure out the flow. This was an excellent exercise. I learned quite a lot in being able to articulate how it works. So thank you for that opportunity.
Yeah, well, thank you. I did have a question about the themes. Does the theme carry over into the library discussion or no?
No, I don't know. I mean, that would be the kind of thing that Dave would probably do, but no. Yeah, and Dave doesn't have a theme of his budget. I mean, that's actually a good suggestion for him to say, hey, if Ray, our finance liaison, if he tells you what the theme is, do you want to put that into yours? But like the way that the city council budget is, like there's what they call a transmittal letter. And it's like, it looks like a Word document and it's like bullet points. It has some tables and stuff in it, a couple of pictures, but it's like a Word document. Like, it's set up in portrait mode. And then when they present the workshop, it's more like PowerPoint with bullet points and stuff like that, and a lot more graphics when they're presenting it in council chambers, because it's just easier to follow. Nobody's going to read a bunch of paragraphs. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So it's interesting to kind of look at it in both ways. For ours, like this is the kind of thing that the Dave from the library would give to us at very high level. Of course, we would also see all the details, like he would provide that as part of the board packet. But as far as high level, what he was presenting to us, and then also when he was presenting to city council, it was more bullet points.
So Alice,
go ahead.
Can I ask a question? So you answered one of my questions. So those workshops, anybody can come and listen, which is important. And then not to go through all of them, but I was actually surprised that most of the revenue didn't come from real estate taxes. So can you just talk about a couple of the other?
Yeah. Okay. So there are, it's actually pretty interesting, and it actually does fall into what the library might need to do. So I just counted them up there. Based on what the city's website, there are 7 different taxes that the city collects. There's a food and beverage tax, which funds the SECA fund. So like the arts, the special arts and cultural amenities, that's 1%, of which this was kind of interesting. The city tax, so all of Naperville is 1%, but there's an additional 0.75% tax to downtown purchases. So if you're doing something downtown, it's 1.75 that you're paying in taxes for food and beverage. So I thought that was kind of interesting. The downtown tax, part of that food and beverage, it goes to the downtown parking fund. And that's where the library comes in, because it goes towards the maintenance of parking facilities. And one of the hot topics, it's come up at library board and it came up at city council on Tuesday, was whether or not to dust off the parking deck project. That came up in 2008. It was all ready to go. And then boom, we had the recession and they tabled it. But it's coming back for discussion now. And in fact, they spent a whole bunch of money for maintaining the existing parking decks. The mayor is incredibly worried that the parking decks are not going to live much longer past 10 years. And we need to have a contingency. And so he's saying, you know what, I think maybe now is the time to start looking at the parking deck for the library again. And I've seen the drawings and they're actually, they're beautiful. Like I was thinking parking deck, absolutely not. And I saw these drawings and I didn't even know it was a parking deck. They're really nice. So there is going to be talk about that. And what's interesting is that the mayor says it's almost fully funded. So we have about 9 million from the maintenance from this fund that's been saved that could be used towards that. And due to some city purchase and sales of properties, we might have additional money. So there only might be a little bit that might need to be funded. Like the mayor basically said we could write a check for this right now because it's a $25 million project to put a parking deck in. So I
Okay,
thought that was interesting because that tied into the library.
yeah.
So then there's a hotel and motel tax that's 5.5%. There's a local gas tax of 4 cents that goes to the road and bridge fund. So a lot of the taxes aren't just like, hey, we're going to take them. They go into a fund, which are then earmarked for specific uses. And then there's state taxes per capita. And this is interesting because it's based on population. So the census numbers were super important because I think we got an extra $36 million because we had such a good count. We had such a complete count for the census that we ended up with $36 million a year now for the next 10 years. So $360 million in addition for state taxes because of the census. So that's excellent. So that's income and use tax, like internet sales, as well as there's a state motor fuel tax. So we get that based on population. And then property taxes, we talked about that already. And then there's real estate, there's a transfer tax, which is basically, purchases and deeds. So like if you were to, it's like a flat rate based on, incremental $500 thing. So if you sold something that was $150,000, that would be a $450 transfer tax. And then there's a home rule sales tax, which was implemented in 2016. So it was pretty new at 0.5%, and it was raised in 2018. That is only for capital projects and used to pay off debt. So that when you hear home rule sales tax, like that's something where we definitely don't want to see that put on the table to start going up, because that's where the city is actually taxing residents, and we don't want that. So it's there, but we want to make sure that it stays flat and does not go up at all.
Well, I know that you have another commitment. We did have one question in the chat regarding a question, how well has Naperville been at balancing their annual budgets, and do they stick to those budgets or do they ever go over?
I think I don't know specifically. I would guess they stick pretty closely to those budgets. Like they're pretty fiscally responsible. And Rachel Mayer, who's the finance director, she's excellent. She's one of the smartest women I've ever met. And she does a really good job of making sure that we handle things. There's also like a 20% cushion that they have saved. So if something were to really happen, like one of the worries is about pensions and stuff, because we actually pay the pension. We fund our pensions in here. We're not relying on the state. We fund those. So if something were to have some huge economic downturn, like we're set with that. Yeah, Diane? You're on mute.
Oops, sorry. Do you have IMRF?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I think that, yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I would guess that part of it does, but I think we fund most of it.
You might fund it, but it is IMRF.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I wasn't.
That's the pension for most municipalities, and it's really
Oh, okay.
so
Yeah.
in townships and whatnot.
Okay, well, thank you so much. This was, you know, we're all we're all nerds on this stuff now. So,
Well, I took way more than 5 minutes, so I'm sorry about that.
yeah, well, that's okay. We have fewer speakers than we thought we'd have. So, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you shared, and wish you very well in your campaign. And I think welcome you to stay as long as you can, but we're going to move on to Margaret De La Rosa.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. Margaret is currently, is it chair, president? What's your title?
I'm actually the president of District
President
87.
of District 87, which is the 4 Glenbard high schools in our county. And I forget how many years you've been on District 87, but I know it's been a while. And so she's gonna share with us how things go in District 87. So take it away.
Well, unlike a library board, we're not appointed. We are elected. A school board is made up of 7 members of the community, and you are elected but unpaid. And that's true for all Illinois school boards. There is no payment. There may be some stipend for some districts. That's not true in Glenbard 87. 80% of our budget, which can be about $140 million, is from property taxes. Now, in the last couple of years, we've had quite a bit of federal money, and we've had an unusually high amount of corporate personal property taxes, which I'm attributing to inflation. But one of the things that we do in Glenbard yes, we most of our money is spent on salaries and health benefits because our business is students. We serve about, I think at our height, we've served about 9,000 students, and we've had like most school districts, have had a declining enrollment due to houses not turning over, people staying in their houses, and basically there are a lot of young people not having children as quickly as in the past. So we're beginning to see declining enrollment for the last few years. We've had a couple of bump ups, but our buildings average about most of our buildings are more than 2,300 students, except for Glenbard South, which is much smaller, about 1,300 students. Like I said, $140 million budget. One of the things that we do within our district is we benchmark ourselves against area high school districts, not unit districts like 205 and Elmhurst or anything like that, but all the high school districts. And what we try to show is our tax rate versus our value of our property. So Glenbard has kind of a medium level of property wealth, but our tax rate is rather low. And so by comparison, we spend about $17,000 per student. And we feel that the community is getting great value if you compared ourselves to other high school districts in this area where we compete for talent. And we're always competing for talent, but we are fortunate in that we are a destination district, and we have many teachers and administrators who want to come to work for Glenbard. So although many districts are having a hard time staffing, we have been very lucky to have a lot of choice in who we select to be in our classrooms and to run the district. So overall, we feel like we're a really good value to our community, and we can prove it because every year we go and benchmark ourselves against those area district schools in terms of what we offer. Now, the other thing that we have been doing, one of the things that the board does is it sets the goals for the superintendent, because the only thing that the board really does is hire that superintendent, set the goals that are incorporated in that superintendent's contract, and gauge performance against those goals. The one thing we've done in Glenbard is we've had consistent goals every year, meaning we don't change goals. We're always looking for the same thing, which is looking for students to have more opportunities, both academically, with meeting inside the classroom and also outside the classroom. So since I've been on the board, oh my gosh, I'm thinking we probably have added 10 additional sports and clubs. We very rarely say no to a club because we feel that makes a better student and it makes a student engaged. The other thing that we've been on a journey of equity. So probably now about 7 years, maybe more than that, we have partnered with equal opportunity schools, where we have opened up AP classes to any student who shows an ability to be able to take that next step and challenge themselves. And we encourage students to challenge themselves. So equal opportunity schools partners with us their whole goal is to get unrepresented students among that AP group. And we have seen our AP participation right now, 41% of last year's class took at least one AP class in their 4 years at Glenbard. And the remarkable thing is that our test percentage has stayed about the same, meaning we've added more kids, more diversity, and yet our percentage of students who are passing is maintaining or growing. And we have become the model, and we've had administrators who have shared with other districts the things that we have done to have students kind of take a step up and forge into that early college experience. The other thing we've done is we've done a really concerted effort on partnering with College of DuPage. Since most of our students either attend College of DuPage or one of the Illinois schools, most kids go to school within 500 miles of the area. And so we've partnered with College of DuPage to offer dual credit classes. So again, students are having an opportunity for an early college experience, and at the same time also decreasing their later expense of college classes. So that's kind of the journey we've been on with our district. We're very careful in how we spend our money. We recognize that every dollar competes with every other dollar, and our focus is always on student and student outcomes. Next year, we are actually changing our school day to include what we're calling the Glenbard Hour twice a week. So on a Monday and a Friday, there'll be 1 hour, actually 43 minutes, that will be dedicated to students and teachers all being available at the same time. So why is this significant? Well, today we have what's called a resource period. The resource period allows a student to go access supports from their teacher, although it may not be their teacher, it may just be the teacher assigned to the resource during that period. And the problem with that model right now is that you have to have a study hall in order to do that. And only about 20% of our students actually have a study hall. And if my family is any kind of study, I have 3 kids over 16 years who attend Glenbard, and none of them had a study hall. So that's just kind of the measure. But next year, 100% of teachers and 100% of students will be available at the same time, those periods on a Monday and Friday, so that kids who need supports can get supports, kids who need enrichment can get enrichment. It'll also be a collaboration period. And it'll also be those times when you need to do fire drills and all those other things that we take up class time for. So and then the following year, we're expecting to move back the school day, meaning that we're going to want to start a little later because that's what's good for teenagers. And then we're hoping to do 2 days of block scheduling, where we're going to open up classes for 90 minutes and what we're calling like slowing down the school day for deeper learning. So those are the kind of things that are on the horizon and been the focus of our board. It's always around students and how to enrich students for better outcomes. We're committed to meeting students where they are when they come to us. We've partnered with our sender districts at the middle school level to align our curriculum. So students are ready when they come to Glenbard, and we are committed to making a post-secondary plan for each student so that they have an idea of what those next steps are as they leave us. So that's kind of where we're at with Glenbard. I think we're on a pretty good road. And that's indicative of what we've seen out of the college clearinghouse. We now know that of students who attend college, once they leave Glenbard, 90% are earning college degrees within a 6-year period. And, you know, that's not a bad measurement. We are exceeding the state in our academic performance. We are exceeding the nation in the number of kids participating and being successful in AP. And the AP is kind of interesting because that's a national curriculum. So we're exceeding the nation with the number of kids that we have going through those courses. So I think we're really doing really great things for kids, and hopefully we'll continue to be able to do that.
Okay, well, thank you. I should also mention that Margaret is also up for, well, she's up for re-election. So we wish you well in your campaign as well. Are there any questions that anyone has for Margaret? I haven't looked at my my tax bill in a bit, but what is the levy right now? Do you have the?
Well, actually, our levy for this year will be at the max of 5%, simply because we're being pushed in the same direction with transportation, teachers, you know, I mean, it all costs. Even where we're really suffering right now in terms of being able to get services is our janitorial staff, and buildings have to be cleaned. You know, there's tear downs and setups all the time because our buildings are active almost all day long with kids and clubs. And we've had actually very good outcomes for kids. I was just at a meeting at Glenbard South on Tuesday night, where we honored a coach, 4 teachers, a dance team. And so every one of our meetings always starts with someone to honor. And we have been very fortunate that there's always someone in the building, you know, that's just off the charts. I can't say enough about the teachers of our high schools. They do the hard work, they do the heavy lifting, and I always tell them they make my job a lot easier. So we really appreciate who they are and certainly, you know, what they do for our students.
Well, thank you. Any questions? Well, this is a great time to introduce Dan Markwell, who is, I know exactly how long he's been on the COD board. This has been, this is his 6th year. And in the last, I actually don't know how many years, he has been the chair of the board budget committee. So he was the likely choice. And being a newer trustee myself, I can attest to his expertise and his willingness to share what he knows and how well he understands the budgetary issues regarding COD. So I'd like to introduce Dan and ask him to share information about COD with us.
Sure. Thanks, Flo. Would I be able to share my screen?
Yeah,
with
I'll make
everybody?
you a co-host and then you can do that.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dan Markwell. I'm actually a graduate of Glenbard South, so I'm happy
Dan,
to
we
hear of
can't
all
see
the.
you.
I actually do not have a camera on this computer, unfortunately, so it will just be my voice and a couple of slides tonight. I apologize.
Okay. You should be able to share now.
Okay. Let's see.
Got it.
Okay. So yes, as Flo mentioned, I've been on the board for 6 years. All 6 of those years I have spent on the budget committee. For the last 3, I was its chair. So I'm more than happy to talk about it with everybody tonight. The slides that you're going to see on the presentation tonight, as well as the full budget, are available online at www.cod.edu/budget. And the slides that I'm going to be showing tonight are taken from a document called the Budget in Brief, which our financial office puts together every year, which is just kind of a nice, I think it's like a 15 or maybe 20-page document that just kind of walks you through how we raise and spend our money. So tonight I wanted to answer, I think, the 3 most important questions that everybody has when it comes to budgets, which is, where does the money come from? How is that money spent? And where does that money go? So to answer, where does the money come from? Our total annual budget is $342 million. As members of the board, the portions of that we can control are the local property tax levy of approximately $104 million, which is 31% of our revenue. On average, that's about 2.6% of the average DuPage County tax bill. For myself, my past year taxes were about $5,300, and 170 of that went to College of DuPage. So it was just above 3.2% for me. And since 2014, this has actually decreased by about 7%, a little over $7.5 million over the last 10 years. The other slice is tuition, which is about 70 million, 20% of our annual budget. Our current credit rate per hour is $140 per credit hour. The Illinois state average is 153. And since 2014, our credit rate has actually dropped by $4 per credit hour over the last 10 years. So how is that money spent? Our total budgeted expenses for fiscal year 23 are $365 million. 182 million of that is in what is called the general fund. And that is how much it actually costs to run the college on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. The remaining funds are for things like capital projects that use state or federal funding, building maintenance projects, and interest payments on the remainder of the college's bonds, which will be paid off by 2032. So for those of you doing the math at home, that is on paper a $23 million annual deficit. Over the last several years, we have run similar double-digit in the $1 million deficits, but through, especially during COVID, underspending on discretionary spending and reining in some of the construction projects that we have had over the past few years, we have significantly cut a number of those deficits. That does still leave us with a multi-million-dollar deficit. The last couple of years, it's usually been between 5 and 7. And those will be addressed by the board through initiatives to expand enrollment, as well as modest increases to the tuition and the tax levy that we saw on the previous slide. So where does this money go? The general fund, that $182 million, pays for a little more than 2,600 jobs. 1,300 of those live inside of our district, retaining $78 million, which is 21% of our entire budget and 75% of the local property tax levy here within District 502, which is most of DuPage County, and then a little slice of Will on the south there, and a little slice of Cook on the southeast. We spend $179 million in operational expenditures, the majority of which go to local businesses that have secured contracts through our bidding process. And we generate an estimated $405 million in economic output for DuPage County. So that is the end of my short presentation. I know it was pretty brief, but that is kind of just a quick snippet of where we get our money and how we spend it. And to put it in perspective of the April elections, the trustees are going to be able to determine how we address that multi-million-dollar budget deficit that I discussed before. The college has been fortunate that in the past, the county offered very strong support financially and built up significant reserves that the college has relied upon for the past, most of the past decade. And while those reserves are a definite boon to the college, they will not last forever. No institution can operate a paper deficit of $23 million for very long. So that is something definitely to keep in mind of the positions of the candidates running for the College of DuPage board and their opinions on how we can close that deficit. So then I'll take any questions.
Any
So-
questions for Dan?
Yeah, I have a couple, and
Okay.
Flo, it might be you or Dan. So
No, it's Dan.
so well, no, this is actually related to budget, but really the students. Dan, you may have said it, but I might have missed it. Is how many students are there at College of DuPage? Does anybody know what the number?
Yes. So on average,
There it
we see about 22,000 credit students, which is traditional students, and then 31,000 non-credit students, which predominantly are in our adult and continuing education classes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
This is Margaret. So as you've run these deficits, why have you not changed your levy?
That has been a point of great discussion amongst the board, but the board has felt over the past number of years that due to the size of our reserve funds and some of the other options that are available to us through expanded federal and state funding with certain grant programs, that there are other ways that we can go about solving that problem rather than simply raising the tax levy year to year.
And do you think that's a sustainable approach, or are you getting to a point where you're going to, you'll use your reserves to a point and then you will then go back and levy?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think that the board is attempting to find a middle ground where we can make more relaxed, more modest increases to the tax levy when appropriate, rather, than waiting until the deadline and then making large hikes. But it, given the climate for demographics in our county, as you were talking about, our student population is decreasing, and so we can expect that the revenues from them, even if we are going to continue to raise tuition, are not going to grow by leaps and bounds. So our reserves will last a while, but not forever.
Thank you.
And I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I believe in restricted funds, which pays for this $136 million right here on the expenditure line. I believe that fund has around $200 million in it.
Mhm.
There are parts of tuition that pay for building maintenance, and parts of like the bond and interest fund, which is a separate way that money is gathered. So some of those things kind of pay for themselves in a way. But I believe that we have about $230 million in restricted funds for building maintenance and certain capital projects, so that they do not need to be paid for the general fund. And the rest of that restricted purpose is mostly state money. There's a lot of matching state funds for maintenance, particularly of our physical plant and some of our off-site locations that we partner with other institutions, and we get matching state funds to maintain those as well.
And what do you think will be the future of College of DuPage as the population ages? Do you think the offerings will change? We're seeing certainly we have less. We have a declining enrollment, and we're predicted to have a declining enrollment for the next 5 years, which I assume will mean declining enrollment at the community college level as well.
Mhm.
Yes.
But do you
Yeah,
see
I
that
think-
shifting to a non-traditional path, or, is that where you'll make up that those offerings?
I think so. I think what we're seeing is in addition to the population decline of our traditional graduated from high school student, we're also seeing a very big demand for hybrid and online courses. And we're beginning to explore online certificates and different degree programs to kind of allow us to tap into that more. But we are already seeing that partly because of the aging population of the county, that our continuing education program of adults coming back to the college, even though it's not generating tuition for us, is actually significantly more popular than traditional student programs. Even though the traditional student may spend more time on a daily basis at the college, there are more adults coming back to be educated here than there are return students or high school graduates. So I think it's going to be a balance of the two. The younger students are going to want more flexibility to be able to take classes online. So I foresee a lot more technology being incorporated to our courses, at the same time that we're going to have to maintain a lot of the offerings that we have through the continuing ed and adult programs, because there is clearly a large market in the county for that. And those are more predominantly in-person on college grounds events.
So if I could add a couple of things, there is a growing interest in developing these certificates. They're described in many cases as stackable, so that they take a larger program and then build a certificate, which is a subset of that larger program, and then have several of these subsets so that returning students, people who are looking to change their jobs or advance in the current position, are able to satisfy an intermediate goal and then go further if if they choose or if they can. And on the high school level, you actually, Margaret, had mentioned the dual credit effort, and that to me is a pretty exciting opportunity. When I first heard about dual credit, and for everyone, dual credit is an opportunity for a high school student to take a college course for high school credit as well as college credit. And it shifts the paradigm of high school to college so dramatically that it took me a while to wrap my brain around it as a viable effort. But it does address many needs of many of our students. It also addresses equity issues because we can meet high school students where they are. Now, one of our issues with dual credit currently is that we do not charge tuition for dual credit. And so we are dependent on, I think the state, is that right, Dan? We do get money from the state, but we don't charge tuition. And other community colleges actually do charge tuition. So we are in the process of investigating what it might take to introduce tuition, with the hope that the federal government will come through with an adjustment to the definition of being eligible for Pell Grants. Because the current Pell Grants require a student to have, I think it's 600 hours in their program. And the proposal that's been around for a few years now is to reduce that to 150 and to actually tie it to career-oriented certificates, so that a high school student would be eligible for Pell funding without having to come up with any tuition by themselves. So it's complicated, but it does really seem to be, and Dan can comment on this too, the biggest way that we can address, even though it is a dwindling high school student population or traditional age population, where we really can make a difference in their education and in their ability to find employment. And there are situations where students graduate from high school with certificates, and in extreme cases with associate's degrees, which sounds very hectic, but it is something that we have learned about. So a lot of creative solutions need to be employed. And equity is a big piece of our concerns across the board. How we can have satisfactory degree or certificate completion rates so that students can actually meet their goals and move on.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, Laura.
Oh, shucks. So any other questions? Martin, I know you were talking about the 3+1 program. Do you want to just unmute and bring that up?
I'll do my best, Flo, but my internet connection isn't the best. Let's just say that there's a lady sitting upstairs who takes more to broadband than I do. So
Oh, okay. Well, I can do it if you like. I did
no,
see.
it's fine, just in case I do cut off. So it kind of came about organically in the conversation, but I'm a graduate of College of DuPage. And when I finished the College of DuPage, I went on to the 3+1 program at Benedictine. And even though we were officially known as cohort number 2, we were really the first cohort who finished the program. I think they're up to cohort number 23 now. But again, this was the partnership between College of DuPage and Benedictine. And just so everybody knows, Haroon Acha was one of my classmates. And to make things worse, he was also one of my group mates as well. So we spent 18 months together. It was a fun time. But I'm also hearing that this program now is coming to an end, and as we're looking for opportunities to increase partnerships, particularly when students are trying to go all the way from District 87 straight through to undergrad and even graduate school, these partnerships are kind of important. And I know Harper do some with some schools in the Schaumburg area. And I was just wondering if College of DuPage is actually looking to extend more of these partnerships as opposed to ending them, or is there an opportunity to go back to Ben U and kind of revive that one as well? And of course,
Yeah.
full disclosure, I'm adjunct faculty at Ben U. I'm actually furiously grading papers right now as well. So.
Well, so I don't know about Benedictine, but I know we do have a 3+1 program with Lewis.
Yes.
So, yeah. Do you know? I don't know. I haven't really heard about Benedictine.
I'm not very familiar with the Benedictine program. I do know the Lewis program. For the first for the 3 years I was at College of DuPage, I was enrolled in that program. But I got a job after getting my associate's degree and have not gone back to finish the +1 yet. I do know that we have tried exploring some of those partnerships with other area colleges. I think North Central College was one of the colleges that we were in discussions with. I do know that it has gotten a little difficult at times, particularly because of the outmigration of Illinois high school students, that the system here has, particularly during the 2 years of the budget impasse, became significantly more competitive within the state of Illinois, because so many of our students were choosing to leave the state. Those are the years that a lot of state institutions saw some very acute declines in enrollment. College of DuPage itself, I believe it was 6.5, and then 6% 2 years in a row was the worst of it for us. But for my part, I would love to see us get more of those programs, because I think that building that pipeline is the route to success. I think what we're seeing in other states, particularly at Alamo colleges down in Texas, is programs very much like that, where they are trying to build a steady pipeline where students are coming straight out of high school into a community college, and then either out of a community college into a job or into a 4-year program to finish their bachelor's degree. So I definitely think that will be the way that successful institutions move and adapt.
Okay, well, thank you so much for this. I did a little math, and just in the the 3 presentations we have heard, we have been talking about over $1 billion. And you know, we haven't even gone beyond the tip of the iceberg here with all the municipalities and all the school districts and all of that. So I think it would do us well going forward to encourage our our communities to get a better grasp on what makes government run, and what and how we support our communities, and how these budgets are documents that should be reflecting the values and the ideals of our communities. So thanks, Dan, for that. And just generally, thanks for all your service over these last 6 years, and especially over these last 2 years. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you.
Thank you, Flo. It has been a pleasure.
Maybe not always, but
But we'll say it was.
yeah. Okay, well, thanks again. Linda, did you want to close us out, or what are you thinking?
Yep, I'm going to share my screen, and I've got a couple comments before I get to this nice little pie chart. I want to, the theme of our meeting tonight is, what's on the ballot come April, and why should we care? And I hope that as people listened to our speakers tonight, they had a sense of why you should care, who actually is on these boards. So, because as you heard, first of all, there is a lot of money, but that really should not be the main thing. You want people, obviously, that are very careful about how money is spent, but what you're hearing also is how people care about the outcomes and who their customers are. And in the case of the schools, it's the students. And in the case of municipalities, it's, your quality of life. How is the municipality keeping things running where you live? So that's part of why we should care. And I certainly heard it from the people that spoke. What I did on this pie chart is I took my own real estate tax bill. I don't have the dollars, but I looked at, well, where does my money go? And you can see that high school district 99, very big part of the chart. Grade school district 58, slightly bigger. College of DuPage is a little bit smaller, 4%. The library, because the library budget now, for Downers Grove, similar to Naperville, there is no election for the library board, but they are appointed. But they take up 3.6%. And within this other, there are other, some of the municipality budgets. But again, as we heard from Naperville, municipalities get their funding from other places. But so much of this pie right here, which is your real estate tax, is on the ballot. The people that are responsible for this money, making sure that they're spending it effectively, is what you're paying for, and it's on the ballot in April. So everybody should care about who is getting elected to these boards. You want somebody who's passionate about the goals and what they're trying to accomplish, being effective, who they're trying to, who are they serving, that they have a passion for that, and also that they care about the details. I mean, you've heard people that are on boards, some don't get paid, some do, but for school boards, they don't, but they care about the children and the community at large, that we are being effective in how we're spending that money and meeting our goals. So it's extremely important that everybody, vote and do a careful job of figuring out who's running for these positions. You want people that are willing to do the work and understand what the goals are, and that, we are trying to educate our children in the case of school boards from kindergarten upwards all the way to the end of COD, and that they are not trying to win points by whatever they decide to complain about or say that they're going to change because of something they don't like. That's just I'll call it the topic of the day that's supposed to concern people. So you have to be really careful to understand who's running. And this is why you should care, because it's really important that this money is used effectively. And we're providing the services that everybody needs. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that, and I don't know, Flo, if you're going to mention it, Indivisible DuPage is not endorsing anybody. I mean, there's a lot of people running, so we're not endorsing, but we are trying to find candidates who we think share our values and care about the board, what they're running for, care about what they're supposed to be providing, the service they're supposed to be providing for the constituents. So we will list on our website people that we think you should take a look at. If we have information about answers they've provided to either the newspapers, or if we get videos of forums, we will put that on our website. And we will not list people that we think you shouldn't vote for, but we will have information about organizations that don't necessarily have the best interest of the community at heart. And if we think there's some that you should watch for, and if they're endorsing a candidate, maybe that's not a candidate we want to elect. So we will have, we're still working on that. We will have that on our website, and you can just go to Indivisible DuPage on your, URL, your search engine, I guess, and enter it.
If you just Google it, it's
if
a
you just Google
Google
it, thank you.
page, so
Yeah.
you should be able to find it
You'll
right
find
away.
it. And so we're trying to get the word out, and so talk to as many people as you can, that this should be a high percentage voting election every year. It's it's every other year on the odd years, and unfortunately so many people don't pay attention to it. And you've heard from these people that are amazing, that spend their time making sure that the money is being spent effectively, and that we're reaching the goals, especially for our students. And if you don't have people out there voting, you could get the wrong people in. So we're just encouraging everybody, make sure that you vote, and we should try for a very high turnout. And that's the end of my 2 cents.
So if I look at this pie chart, it's pretty evident that just about 3/4 of it is education.
Yep. Now
And
again, yeah, for your real estate taxes, definitely. Now,
right,
the reason you're
right.
not seeing municipalities being bigger, they're kind of buried in the other, is because
Right.
they have other ways that they also raise money.
Sure. Yeah, like Allison was talking
Right.
about with all of those.
Right. So it's a very important election, and we need to get the word out.
Okay. So everybody take the voting pledge. I pledge to vote. Well, thank you, everyone. And again, I know we had a small group here, but we do hope to reach many more on Facebook. We will send you all the link and to the recording. And please feel free to share it far and wide. We will have it on our Indivisible DuPage Facebook page, and also in our weekly email. So thanks again, and I hope everyone has a good evening.
Thanks. Have a good evening, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Martin.
Burden.
Okay.
Can you stop the recording, Dave?
Yeah.